Have you ever tried to help someone, offering your time, energy, and advice, only to feel more and more drained as they keep acting confused? You try everything: patience, understanding, and support, but in the end, they walk away without a single ounce of gratitude, leaving you with nothing but frustration. It's like handing someone the answer to a riddle, only for them to keep asking you, as if they never got it in the first place. It's like trying to patch up a leaky boat, but no matter how many times you fix one hole, 3 more appear. That's what happens when you keep trying to help someone who's pretending to be confused. They just keep draining your energy without ever really changing. In this video, we'll dive into why this behavior is a manipulation tactic based on Stoic psychology. We'll uncover how to spot the signs early, so you're never caught in this web of confusion again. And the final revelation? It's something so subtle most people never even notice it. But before we dive in, pay attention to this story, which will help you better understand the wisdom in this material. The story of Daniel, the truth behind fake confusion. Daniel was a sharp and observant man. He believed in honesty and directness, but lately something strange had been happening. His friend Eric had borrowed money months ago, but now acted confused whenever Daniel reminded him. "Wait, I don't remember that. Are you sure?" Eric would say, scratching his head. His co-worker Jake always forgot important deadlines and then pretended to be lost when confronted. Even his girlfriend Sarah had started playing the same game. Whenever Daniel pointed out inconsistencies in her stories, she would tilt her head and laugh nervously. "Huh? I don't know what you're talking about." At first, Daniel thought maybe he was overthinking, but deep inside, something felt off. One evening, Daniel visited his grandfather, a wise old man known for seeing through people. As they sipped tea, Daniel shared his frustration. His grandfather chuckled and placed 2 sugar cubes into his tea. "Tell me, Daniel, what happens when you stir sugar into a drink?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "It dissolves, of course." The old man nodded. "And yet, if someone doesn't want to admit there's sugar in their tea, they'll keep stirring, acting as if it's invisible." Daniel frowned, thinking. His grandfather continued, "Confusion is often just a stirring act. When people pretend they don't remember or don't understand, it's because admitting the truth would expose them. So they keep stirring the lie, hoping you'll doubt your own eyes." That night, Daniel saw everything clearly. Eric wasn't forgetful. He was avoiding responsibility. Jake wasn't lost. He was dodging blame. Sarah wasn't confused. She was hiding something. The next time someone acted confused around him, Daniel didn't argue. He didn't try to explain or convince them. He just smiled and said, "It's okay. I already know the truth." And just like that, their masks slipped. When people pretend to be confused, it's often a trick to manipulate your trust. If someone always forgets, misunderstands, or acts clueless when the truth is obvious, they're lying. Real confusion is temporary. Fake confusion is a strategy. So next time someone keeps stirring the sugar, just smile. Because deep down, you already know the truth. Before we begin with the first lesson, if you find these videos helpful, I encourage you to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated on the latest content. Let's begin. Number 1. Genuine confusion is temporary, not repetitive. Let's dive into something that can be a major red flag: someone who constantly acts confused, especially when it suits them. At first, you might give them the benefit of the doubt. They seem genuinely puzzled, asking questions to clarify the situation. Maybe they didn't understand something the first time, or they missed a key detail. But when confusion becomes a pattern, something's not adding up. If they repeatedly don't understand, despite your explanations, it's no longer about clarity, it's about avoidance. Here's the truth. People who are truly confused seek clarity. They want to understand, they ask questions, and they try to make sense of things because they genuinely want to know. But those who keep pretending to be confused, they're often avoiding the truth. It's not that they don't understand. They simply don't want to accept the reality you're presenting. They might be protecting themselves from uncomfortable truths or evading responsibility. It's easier to act confused than to confront the reality of the situation. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "To lie to oneself is the worst form of deception." When someone continuously pretends not to understand, they are not just deceiving you, they're deceiving themselves. By repeatedly acting confused, they avoid facing the truth, and in doing so, they undermine their own ability to grow. Genuine growth requires honesty. To avoid the truth is to stay stagnant. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Claire, had a colleague who always acted confused whenever it was time to take responsibility for their mistakes. If something went wrong, Claire's colleague would ask questions that seemed to demonstrate total lack of understanding. "I'm not sure how that happened. Can you explain it again?" Over time, Claire realized that these weren't genuine questions. They were just distractions. This person wasn't confused. They were avoiding the truth of their own failure. Instead of taking responsibility, they hid behind confusion, hoping someone would clean up the mess for them. So, how do you handle someone who keeps acting confused? First, don't feed into their confusion. If they can't understand something after it's been explained multiple times, it's no longer about teaching, it's about avoidance. Second, ask them direct questions. Instead of repeating yourself, ask, "What exactly is unclear to you?" Often, the inability to provide a clear answer will reveal their true intentions. And finally, stop wasting energy trying to convince someone who doesn't want to understand. If they're lying to themselves, there's little you can do to change their perspective. At the end of the day, genuine confusion is temporary. People who truly want to learn seek clarity, but those who keep pretending not to understand are only trying to avoid facing the truth. Don't let someone's false confusion distract you from what's real. Number 2, intentional confusion is a manipulation tactic. Let's talk about something you've probably experienced at one point or another, someone who intentionally pretends to be confused. At first, it might seem like they genuinely don't understand what's going on. They ask questions, they feign ignorance, and they give you the impression that they're struggling to grasp something. But when this confusion becomes a pattern, it's no longer about misunderstanding. It's a tactic. It's an intentional strategy to avoid responsibility and avoid being held accountable for their actions. Here's the truth. When someone pretends not to understand, they delay accountability and shift blame. This is a manipulation tactic designed to avoid confrontation and deflect attention from their own mistakes. Instead of owning up to their actions, they create a smokescreen of confusion, forcing you to explain things over and over while they sit back and do nothing. They know exactly what they're doing. They just don't want to take the heat for it. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Seneca said, "A dishonest man will pretend ignorance to escape responsibility." Think about that for a second. Pretending not to understand isn't a lapse in intelligence. It's a deliberate attempt to avoid responsibility. By feigning confusion, they create the illusion that they don't know better, thus escaping the consequences of their actions. But the truth is, this tactic reveals a lack of integrity. It's a clear sign of dishonesty and avoidance, not genuine misunderstanding. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Jake, had a colleague who would always act confused when it was time to take responsibility for a mistake. Whenever a project went wrong, this colleague would ask questions like, "I'm not sure how this happened. Can you explain it again?" But after a few times, Jake realized that it wasn't confusion. It was a deliberate delay tactic. His colleague wasn't trying to understand. They were trying to avoid taking responsibility and shift the blame onto others. By pretending not to know, they bought themselves time and kept others from holding them accountable. So, how do you handle intentional confusion? First, don't get caught in the cycle of explanations. If someone is pretending not to understand, don't feel obligated to explain things repeatedly. Recognize the tactic and stop feeding into it. Second, hold them accountable. Instead of re-explaining, ask direct questions like, "What exactly is unclear to you?" Their inability to give a clear response will often reveal their true intentions. And finally, stop making excuses for them. If someone consistently pretends confusion to avoid responsibility, it's time to stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. At the end of the day, intentional confusion is not ignorance. It's a manipulation tactic. People who refuse to take accountability will often pretend not to understand in order to escape responsibility. Don't fall for it. See through the act and hold them accountable for their actions. If you found this valuable, hit like and subscribe for more powerful insights. Number 3. Evasion is a defense mechanism. Let's talk about a behavior that can be frustrating and confusing, someone who constantly acts unsure or evasive. They might avoid giving direct answers, sidestep difficult topics, or give vague responses whenever they're asked to clarify something important. At first, you might think it's just a personality trait or that they genuinely don't know what they want. But over time, you start to see a pattern. They are intentionally evading the truth. Their uncertainty is not a sign of confusion, it's a defense mechanism. Here's the truth. If someone constantly acts unsure, they may be hiding their true motives. People who are hiding something often try to avoid directly engaging with difficult questions or situations. By remaining vague or acting uncertain, they prevent others from probing deeper. This gives them control over the situation and allows them to keep their motives concealed. Instead of facing the consequences or taking responsibility, they choose to act uncertain or indecisive. It's easier to stay in a position of ambiguity where they don't have to reveal their true intentions or face uncomfortable truths. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Epictetus said, "Truth stands the test of time. Lies are soon exposed." When someone is constantly evasive, they are trying to manipulate the situation to avoid revealing the truth. But the truth has a way of coming to the surface, no matter how much someone tries to hide it. Evasion may work temporarily, but it cannot stand up to the power of truth. Eventually, their inability to be direct will catch up with them. The lies they tell will eventually unravel, exposing their motives. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Emma, had a colleague who was always evasive whenever important decisions needed to be made. If a question was asked directly, this colleague would respond with something like, "I'm not sure about that right now. I need to think about it more." Or they would shift the topic entirely. After a while, Emma began to realize that this person wasn't unsure. They were intentionally avoiding the truth. Whenever it was time to take responsibility for their actions or make a tough call, they would pull back, giving vague answers and never committing to anything concrete. Emma eventually recognized this as a defense mechanism to avoid being exposed or held accountable. So, how do you handle someone who uses evasion as a defense mechanism? First, be direct with them. If they're avoiding the truth, it's important to ask clear, straightforward questions. Don't let them hide behind vagueness. Second, observe their behavior over time. consistent evasion is a clear red flag. If someone constantly avoids giving direct answers, it's a sign they're hiding something. And finally, don't let their avoidance cloud your judgment. Stay focused on the truth. If they refuse to engage with you honestly, the truth will eventually come to light. At the end of the day, evasion is a defense mechanism, not a sign of uncertainty. People who hide behind vagueness and avoidance are often trying to protect themselves from the consequences of their actions. Don't be fooled. Truth will always stand the test of time. Be patient, stay true to your values, and eventually, the truth will reveal itself. Number 4. They want you to doubt yourself. Let's discuss a tactic that can be incredibly disorienting and damaging, someone who pretends confusion to make you doubt yourself. It may start innocently enough. They act like they don't understand what you're saying, or they act as if they don't recall the details of a situation. But over time, this behavior starts to wear you down. They constantly make you second-guess your own perception, memory, and judgment. What seemed like an occasional misunderstanding turns into a pattern, one where they manipulate you into doubting your own reality. Here's the truth. By pretending confusion, they make you question your own perception and memory. This is a subtle form of manipulation, gaslighting. They want to shake your confidence and make you feel unsure of your own mind. By persistently pretending not to understand, they create a situation where you start questioning whether you're right, even though you know you are. The more you doubt yourself, the more control they gain. And the worst part? They'll act innocent, like they don't understand why you're upset, while all along, they're trying to plant seeds of doubt in your mind. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Marcus Aurelius said, "The mind that is deceived cannot find peace." When someone manipulates you into doubting your own thoughts and feelings, it disrupts your inner peace. If you allow someone else to cloud your judgment, you will never find tranquility. The mind that is clouded by confusion, especially self-inflicted confusion, will never be clear or at peace. The Stoic teaches us that clarity of thought is essential to inner peace. Allowing others to create doubt within you steals that peace away. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Tom, had a partner who would often act confused during important conversations. Whenever Tom would bring up an issue, his partner would respond with things like, "I don't remember that happening," or "I'm not sure what you mean by that." At first, Tom assumed it was just forgetfulness or a simple misunderstanding. But after several incidents, he began to feel like something was off. It wasn't just that his partner didn't understand, it was that they were deliberately making him question what he remembered and how he perceived things. Tom realized that this was a form of manipulation. By pretending confusion, his partner was slowly gaslighting him into doubting his own experiences and thoughts. So how do you handle someone who wants you to doubt yourself? First, trust your perception. If you know what you remember and how you feel, don't let anyone make you second-guess that. Second, document key conversations or events. If someone continually tries to manipulate your memory, it helps to have a clear record of facts. And finally, set boundaries. If someone consistently tries to manipulate you in this way, distance yourself. True peace comes from clarity, not from the constant mental fog caused by someone else's confusion tactics. At the end of the day, don't let anyone steal your peace by making you doubt yourself. The mind that is deceived cannot find peace. Stay grounded in your truth and protect your clarity. The more you trust yourself, the less room there is for manipulation to take hold. If you've watched the video this far, don't forget to leave a comment with a "thank God" and give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Your support means a lot and motivates me to keep creating more interesting videos. I hope you find inspiration in them and that we continue learning together. Thank you for your support. Number 5. Lies require more lies. Let's talk about one of the most exhausting and destructive patterns, when someone's lies require more lies to keep up the illusion. At first, it might seem like a small fib, just a little white lie here or there. But then the inconsistencies start to pile up. They say one thing and then say something else later, contradicting themselves in ways that don't add up. To cover their tracks, they continue to weave a complex web of deceit, needing more and more lies to protect the original lie. And guess what? Feigned confusion is often their go-to defense. When they can't keep their story straight, they pretend not to understand what's being asked, to cover up the inconsistencies. Here's the truth. When someone is lying, they struggle to keep their story consistent. Every lie forces them to create another one and another, until they're caught in a tangled mess of contradictions. And instead of owning up to it, they act confused, hoping you'll stop pressing for answers. This confusion isn't real. It's a tactic to keep you from noticing the cracks in their story. It's easier to act like they don't understand than to face the reality that they've been lying all along. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Abraham Lincoln famously said, "No man has a good enough memory to be a successful liar." The truth always has a way of coming to the surface, no matter how many lies are piled on top of it. The more someone lies, the harder it becomes to keep the details straight. And eventually, the contradictions start showing up. The lies become more difficult to maintain, and the truth is always waiting to expose them. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Claire, had a friend who would always tell stories that didn't quite make sense. At first, Claire didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just a mistake. But over time, the inconsistencies started adding up. One day, Claire asked a simple follow-up question about a story her friend had told, and instead of a straightforward answer, her friend got defensive and started acting confused. "I don't know. I must have misspoken." Claire realized this wasn't about confusion. It was a tactic to cover up the lies. The more her friend tried to explain, the more the story fell apart. Claire realized that every lie her friend told required more lies, and the confusion was just a mask to avoid confronting the truth. So, how do you handle someone who's caught in a cycle of lies? First, don't fall for the confusion. When someone pretends not to understand, it's often because they're trying to cover up the holes in their story. Second, pay attention to inconsistencies. Lies don't stay consistent. Watch for contradictions, and don't be afraid to ask direct questions. And finally, trust the truth. You don't need to chase every lie. The truth always finds a way to reveal itself, even if it takes time. At the end of the day, lying only leads to more lying. And eventually, the truth will always catch up. When someone is caught in a web of lies, it's only a matter of time before the story unravels. Remember, no one has a good enough memory to keep up with all the lies they tell. Stick to the truth, and you'll always find your way through the confusion. Number 6. Real honesty seeks resolution, not avoidance. Let's talk about a key element of healthy communication: real honesty. When someone truly values the truth, they don't hide behind confusion or avoidance. They don't play mind games or dodge difficult conversations. Instead, they are open, direct, and seek resolution. The people who value honesty are those who address issues head-on, even when it's uncomfortable, because they understand that the truth is essential to finding a solution. They don't create confusion or mislead others. They communicate clearly because they want clarity, not conflict. Here's the truth. People who value the truth don't play mind games. When you care about honesty, You care about resolution. You don't drag things out, pretending not to understand in order to delay a conversation. You tackle the issue directly because you know that avoiding it only makes it worse. Real honesty seeks to fix problems, not avoid them, and it fosters trust rather than doubt. People who are genuinely truthful don't want to keep things in the dark. They bring them into the light to find a way forward. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in. Plato once said, "A wise man speaks because he has something to say, a fool because he must say something." A wise person communicates with intention, seeking to clarify, resolve, and improve the situation. They don't talk just for the sake of talking or hide behind confusion. They communicate because they have something meaningful to contribute and they want to move forward with clarity. On the other hand, those who pretend not to understand or avoid difficult conversations do so because they don't want to face the truth or take responsibility. Their aim isn't resolution, it's avoidance. Let me share a story. A guy I know, let's call him Matt, had a close friend who would often avoid important conversations by pretending to not understand. Whenever Matt would bring up an issue, this friend would act like they didn't get the point, saying things like, "I don't know. I just don't understand what you mean." At first, Matt thought it was just a misunderstanding, but over time, he realized that his friend wasn't confused. They were avoiding the conversation. They didn't want to face the issue because it was too uncomfortable. Matt recognized that this wasn't honesty. It was a form of evasion. And every time his friend acted confused, the issue remained unresolved. So how do you handle people who avoid the truth? First, don't tolerate avoidance. If someone is pretending not to understand, keep your communication clear and direct. Don't allow them to dodge responsibility. Second, ask for clarity. Instead of letting them off the hook with vague responses, ask them to explain what's unclear. This often forces them to confront the issue. And finally, stay committed to resolution. Don't let avoidance derail you. Real honesty seeks to resolve problems, not avoid them. Keep pushing for clarity and don't allow confusion to cloud the truth. At the end of the day, real honesty seeks resolution, not avoidance. When someone values truth, they don't hide behind confusion or make excuses. They speak openly and directly because they understand that honesty is the foundation of resolution. A wise person speaks to solve problems. A fool speaks to avoid them. Don't get caught in the game of avoidance. Seek the truth, speak it, and find a way forward.